Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate everyone taking the time and getting to learn about Midwood, Midwood data, and what we're building here with Terrain. So as it relates to the PropTech Challenge, when we were reading through some of the specs and the topic items, that are relevant over the what seems to be a never-ending 2020. One of the things really jumped out and resonated with what it is that we're doing here is really identifying best technologies available to assist with location analysis by providing actionable intelligence on relevant data points. So what I'll do is take you through and give you a bit of an intro to Midwood, to Terrain as our platform, and give you an idea of how this applies more broadly in the context of real estate investment and development. So obviously everyone's heard the old adage in real estate: location, location, location. It's fundamental in the real world. Obviously, as we all know, it's the first thing that we use when doing research onto a property and to identifying what it actually is. And then, in the context of an investment firm like Midwood, which has been around for 95 years now and is active in a half a dozen major markets across the country in various asset classes, it allows us to, have a single identifier in the form of an address or a, latitude and longitude pair to, begin to kick off, what would otherwise become months and months worth of analysis and engaging with consultants to develop the relevant context needed to allow us to understand a particular location. So this is not necessarily anything new, even in the real estate and PropTech sphere, in the sense that I would imagine that everyone in this conference and in this virtual room is probably a power user of Google Maps, whether that be in a professional context, and navigating to the grocery store day to day, which is really an incredible platform for a multitude of uses. However, it's not ever been designed specifically with real estate in mind. However, it's incredibly widely used, by everyone in our community. So, as a result of that, when you type in a location or you're cruising around a map, the results that are populated, are the same for you as a professional investor or developer as it is for a tourist that's trying to find, all the top sites around New York City, let's say. So what we did is we, push all of our existing third-party software platforms and tools to the limit, and we, then started to, get to work on devising a product and a platform that could allow us to fill in those gaps to achieve our business objectives. And it really fall into three buckets. So number one, as an investment company with a 95-year track record, how do we take this universe of data, quantify our investment priorities into a easily digestible, transparent, and defensible way? When you talk, this would be the equivalent of us trying to boil everything that we do down into effectively a rating system. And what that allows us to do in second bullet here is to rapidly qualify opportunities, the locations of opportunities with market leading insight. And that, really speaks to the breadth of information, which, I'll show you momentarily, but also the depth of content that we're able to offer, not only in a, in an investment context, but also across our development team who are looking to learn key insights about, contextual pieces of data and what's happening with our neighbors and surrounding environmental conditions, as well as, collaborating with counterparties, whether that be city governments, tenants, et cetera. And lastly, but certainly not least, is absent a specific location or an address to look at, where should we be looking? Do we have blind spots? And are there locations that might align with our investment philosophy that we're not currently covering from a research perspective? So what we've done is we've developed a software platform called Terrain, which is a location analytics system that uses GIS technologies to deliver deep local insights that inform decision making. In layman's terms, basically what this means is it's a piece of software that allows us to interact with algorithms that we've put together and specific deals that exist within the universe of locations that we've analyzed. So the software layer is one part of it. There's also a tremendous amount of data science and analytics and aggregation that go on behind the scenes that allow us to really get from A to B. And we've had to do this in the context of a living, breathing investment and development organization where we have tons of inbound deal activity that comes in. And then we're constantly trying to come up with, like I mentioned, good new ideas for things that are aligned with our objectives for the future. And we have to do that in such a way where we're working from the investment committee meeting backwards. So if you think about that meeting as being a, call it 60-minute to 2-hour affair, for a particular asset, we need to effectively have the CNN magic wall equivalent where we can pull up this huge catalog of data and use it to support decision making in real time and with digestible specificity. And the world has obviously thrown us all a wrench in whatever plans we may have had this year. And so, to take it a level beyond that, we've had to not only identify and source and bring in this huge and rapidly growing universe of COVID-related data, but to overlay that in the existing commercial real estate analytical framework that we have, and then to recalibrate some of our algorithms to really understand where there are opportunities within the new world that we're all living in. And so when I say that we're trying to boil this down, and one of the things that's important to mention here is that we have a letter grading system, which has come about through trial and error. We tried a 1 to 100 scale, and that wasn't as easily explainable. And so what we've done is, for any user that exists within Midwood, they know they can log onto this platform, and they can really easily understand what our investment team's assessment of that quality is. And it presents it in this beautiful and interactive data visualization that we call the mosaic. And so within one panel here alone, we can show the hierarchy of the location of a particular address, how that relates to an overall score, as well as a score that is specific to a particular asset type or opportunity. And then we answer the why, and that's really the important thing. Is if we say that Los Angeles maybe is a great investment, we have to be able to explain in excruciating detail and with explicit transparency why that is, and that relates to meeting after meeting that we've had internally that says, okay, well, how do we take this data, how do we prioritize it, and give it a relative level of importance, and then pick the right data points and assess their strength within that framework. And basically all of that comes out in the wash in the form of this score, which is pretty akin to like a Netflix matching algorithm. So what's going to be on the top of my recommendations wouldn't necessarily be on the top of yours, but it's specific to our business, and it's certainly something that can and is customized for a variety of really specific use cases or various companies, et cetera. And the way we do that is we basically build a platform across multiple layers. And so we devised a matching algorithm, which is really a complex spatial suitability algorithm, that evaluates cities and metro areas really at a macro level, and takes into a bunch of things into account, like economic conditions, drivers of growth, transportation infrastructure, the development environment, local government competence, and market conditions. And this basically is meant to distill the quality of a city and its location as in the context of positioning for future success of real estate opportunities there. Now, that could mean any number of things, but it happens to be for the size and type of buildings and assets that Midwood pursues. This is a pretty good barometer. But then once we get to the map of that city, we need to understand where to begin looking or where those hotspots are within a local context. And we do that by a second layer of algorithm, which we call area score. It's kind of, let's say, our version of walk score in some ways. And it considers a completely different, but hyper local, level of relevance, across like a variety of different data points, as far as the population composition, resources available, so access to schools and hospitals and shopping and amenities, transportation on a local level in terms of where you might be close to a bus stop or a bike share or something along those lines. Also, similarly, development conditions, livability, and market conditions. So what I'll do is actually go into the platform here and show you an example of how this works. So give me a second to load this up. And what you'll see here is, first we'll start with kind of the exploratory use case, right? So, you wake up in the morning as a, the VP of investments at Midwood, in my shoes, and, we have to, come up with some ideas of, where we might begin to look. Now, the data from, in this platform and these algorithms, which, comprise the scoring, really, they come in from third-party, public, validated sources or things that can be procured by a proprietary license, and they are refreshed on a frequency level that is reflective of the relevance of the latency of that data. So for some things like foot traffic and mobility, they may be refreshed weekly. For things like bedrock depth, which are geological in nature, they're not necessarily refreshed. But we just to basically fast forward and reverse so that we can, in this case, what our view of the world looked like in a pre-COVID environment and then a post-COVID environment. And it allows us to, dig deep and to, evaluate that city across a bunch of factors, as I mentioned in the algorithm. So this is where we get to the why, right? So, if I'm looking at cities across the Northeast, let's say, and I'm interested in understanding why Washington, D.C. comes highly recommended, maybe I can pull up the, the public transit ridership, information, which we basically created hundreds of different maps based on the underlying data that are specifically curated to, our view of the world, as well as, the best method of presentation. The same goes for, like any of these other factors that I mentioned, including, all the latest COVID maps and things like that are, so you can see they're being pulled in here, in near real time. So, we're able to explore it at the macro level. We're able to explore at the micro level, and similarly, as we, get into, more of a local environment, we're able to query, specific addresses, neighborhoods, you name it. So if we take Midwood's project, for instance, at 150 East 78th Street on the Upper East Side, we can give you basically a snapshot as far as our thesis. And I have left this in here with pre-COVID content just for privacy and security reasons. But, we have a project where we own 2 parcels right here on 78th and Lexington. And for us to be able to explain to a bank, a lender, or, any other counterparty, why we have a viewpoint in a particular location, this gives us the opportunity to do that basically immediately. And what it does is it takes public data like the census and things like that loads of people have access to, but we also have a bunch of proprietary calculations and analytics in here that do things that are more advanced, including doing a sentiment analysis of neighborhood names and studying the amount of media coverage that a particular neighborhood gets, and if that's in a positive or negative context. We also have things that are directly relevant to our development team, when we're trying to evaluate the capacity and the potential for oversupply in an area. So we've basically gone into the zoning data and we've pulled things that are illuminating capacity at the block aggregate level, and then also showing by means of these little flares here, where there are actually projects that are ongoing and what those projects actually are that may be competitive with a deal that we would do there. We also have other things that can help to explain things like city budget patterns and, the not only the fiscal condition, but also the industry composition and strength and how that may be impacted by, various events, including pandemic. And given that we are a development company at our core, one of the things that we've, also done in here for, at least for our internal uses, is provide the ability for us to showcase our development projects in 3D in context, such that like we can, actually, serve multiple, we can serve multiple factions within our organization and do things like even, support design charrettes and reviews, within the context of this system, so that we're not necessarily needing to jump back and forth. If we, tend to make a case for why we, are building this building on the Upper East Side, for instance, not only can we show the research and analytics behind it, but then this will open up here. You can see this beautiful Bob Stern building that, we're erecting here, and the actual 3D massing study that comes along with it. So, there's a bunch of things in here that, like, by having, a faculty around maps and geospatial development, we've been able to, really produce something incredible that, is really vital to how we approach, evaluating locations, day in, day out. And I can leave it at that, I guess. So back to here. Here's an example you can see of, the project that we have that is that's rendered here in the system. And if you have any additional questions, we're happy. We're considering bringing in some potentially third-party partners for the first time on this project. So happy to have the discussion with other like-minded organizations that that may be interested in collaborating.